A silent city of bricks waits beneath the sun. 4,000 years ago, across the plains of modern Pakistan and India, the Indus Valley Civilization built a world of stunning sophistication, only to vanish and leave behind a riddle wrapped in mystery. We will explore 30 of its greatest unsolved puzzles, and by the end, you will see the ancient world in a completely new light. This was a society with perfect cities and a forgotten script, a culture that mastered its environment yet left no monuments to its kings. How does an entire civilization simply erase its own story? What does it mean when the past refuses to speak? What is the most fascinating mystery a civilization can leave behind? The first and most profound silence is etched into stone. Scattered across the ruins of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, archaeologists have recovered thousands of small, square seals, typically made of steatite. These objects are beautiful and intricate, often featuring a detailed image of an animal, a majestic bull, a mythical unicorn, a powerful elephant, and above that image, a line of mysterious symbols. These symbols are the script of the Indus Valley, and they represent perhaps the greatest linguistic puzzle of the ancient world. We have found these inscriptions on seals, on pottery, on copper tablets, and on small, flat pieces of ivory. In total, scholars have catalogued over 400 distinct signs. Some are clearly pictorial, resembling fish or birds or human figures. Others are more abstract, geometric shapes that defy easy interpretation. This is not a handful of markings, it is a full, complex system. Yet despite over a century of study, no one alive today can read a single word of it. The script remains stubbornly, completely undeciphered. Why is this code so unbreakable? The obstacles are immense. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs, which were finally understood thanks to the Rosetta Stone, a single slab bearing the same text in 3 languages, the Indus Valley has yielded no such bilingual key. Every inscription we have is in the script alone. Compounding the problem is the frustrating brevity of the texts. The average inscription is only about 4 or 5 symbols long. The longest ever discovered contains just 26 signs. Imagine trying to decipher the English language if you only had thousands of short phrases like cat sat or red door, but never a complete sentence, let alone a paragraph or a story. You could recognize patterns, but you could never grasp grammar, never understand meaning. This shortness has led to a fundamental and heated debate. Does the Indus script represent a true written language, encoding a spoken tongue like Hindi or Tamil? Or is it something else entirely, a system of proto-writing used for administrative purposes like clan symbols, deities, or commercial labels? Some scholars even argue the symbols are non-linguistic, more akin to heraldic crests or religious sigils. The theories are as numerous as the symbols themselves. Early efforts tried to link it to Sanskrit, the language of the later Vedic people. More prominent modern theories connect it to the Dravidian language family, which includes modern Tamil and Telugu, suggesting the Indus people were the ancestors of today's South Indian populations. Others propose it was an isolated language, a linguistic dead end that vanished with the civilization itself. Today, the quest has entered the digital age. Researchers use powerful computers to perform statistical analyses, looking for patterns in the order of symbols, their frequency, and their positional relationships. They search for the mathematical fingerprints of a true language, yet the stone and clay keep their secret. Every symbol is a locked door. Behind them could be names of kings, prayers to gods, records of trade, or epic poetry. We see the writing everywhere, a civilization that clearly valued the written word, and yet its voice is utterly silent. This is not merely a technical challenge for linguists, it is a profound cultural loss. To decipher this script would be to hear the Indus Valley speak for the first time in 4 millennia. Until then, their greatest stories remain trapped in plain sight. This profound silence makes their final act all the more unsettling. Around 1,900 years before the Common Era, the great civilization of the Indus Valley began to crumble. But unlike the dramatic, fiery collapses depicted in stories of other ancient empires, this was a slow, quiet fading. The meticulously planned cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro were not razed by conquerors. Instead, over generations, people simply stopped maintaining the grand civic order. The drains clogged, buildings were subdivided, and new, flimsier walls were erected in the middle of broad streets. The standardized weights and measures, once the hallmark of a vast trade network, fell out of use. The people did not vanish overnight, but the civilization, as a singular, brilliant entity, did. What force could cause such a meticulously organized society to simply give up? For decades, the dominant explanation was one of violent conquest. This was the Aryan invasion theory. It proposed that around the time of the collapse, nomadic tribes from the northwest, speaking an early form of Sanskrit and calling themselves Aryans, swept into the subcontinent. They were said to be a warlike, horse-riding people whose hymns, the Rig Veda, describe battles, fortresses, and a god named Indra who destroys walled cities. The theory suggested these invaders subdued the indigenous Indus people, leading to a cultural rupture and the end of their urban life. The evidence seemed compelling at first glance. But archaeology has since picked this theory apart. There is no layer of ash, no mass graves filled with the victims of war, no sudden change in artifacts within the cities themselves. The skeletons found at Mohenjo-Daro show no signs of violent trauma from weapons. The material culture does not show a sharp break, but a gradual blending and simplification. The invasion theory, once a clear story, has largely been set aside by modern scholars for lack of proof. So if not invaders, then what? The search turns from human armies to the environment itself. A powerful and now leading hypothesis points to climate change. Geological and archaeological data suggest the region began to experience a significant shift. The monsoons, the lifeblood of agriculture, may have weakened or failed for prolonged periods. Evidence from ancient lake beds and ocean sediments points to a centuries-long trend toward aridity, a mega drought that would have strangled the agricultural surplus needed to sustain great cities. This theory connects to another enduring mystery, the Lost River. Many researchers believe the Rakhigarhi river system, which runs through the heart of the Indus region and now lies mostly dry, was once a mighty, perennial flow. It is often identified with the Saraswati, a magnificent river described in the Rig Veda. Satellite imagery reveals its paleo-channel, the ghost of a great watercourse. If this river dried up due to tectonic shifts that diverted its headwaters or simply dwindled from the lack of rain, the consequences would have been catastrophic. The cities along its banks would have been stranded, their economic and agricultural foundations turning to dust. Imagine the slow, grinding pressure of such a change. A bad harvest one year, a weaker river flow the next. The central authority which organized grain storage and distribution begins to lose its grip. Families facing hunger gradually abandon the strict grid of the city for smaller, more sustainable villages. Trade networks fray as each community turns inward to survive. This was not a single catastrophic event, but a relentless squeeze. Some evidence even suggests earthquakes may have played a role, damaging cities and altering river courses in a final physical blow. The end result was a process scholars call deurbanization. The people did not die out, they adapted. They returned to a simpler, rural way of life. The brilliant, complex machine of civilization was taken apart piece by piece, not by a hammer but by an endless, silent drought. This fade out is in its own way more mysterious than a sudden fall. It asks us how much pressure a society can withstand before its greatest ideas are no longer worth maintaining. Their quiet fade into a rural life deepens another architectural mystery. While Egypt was raising pyramids to the sun and Mesopotamia building ziggurats that scraped the sky, the Indus Valley chose a different path. In the ruins of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, you will find no towering temples, no gargantuan statues of gods or kings, no opulent palaces filled with gold. This is perhaps their most radical departure from every other early civilization. Instead, their monumental architecture was entirely civic, built for the community, not for a single ruler or priesthood. The cities were masterpieces of egalitarian planning. They were laid out on a strict grid pattern with wide, straight streets intersecting at perfect right angles. Every house, from the smallest to the largest, was connected to an astonishingly advanced city-wide drainage system. Each home had a bathing area with a drain that fed into a street-side channel, which then flowed into larger, brick-lined sewers buried beneath the avenues. This was a society that invested its greatest architectural effort not in glorifying individuals, but in public health and order. The most imposing structures were utilitarian. The Great Bath at Mohenjo-Daro is a perfect example. It is a large, waterproofed brick tank carefully sealed with bitumen, set within a complex of rooms and courtyards. It was clearly a place of immense importance, likely for ritual purification, but it was not a temple in the traditional sense. It feels more like a serene public facility. Nearby stood the massive granary, a raised platform with air ducts to keep stored grain dry, a building that speaks of centralized collection and redistribution for the common good. So where did the rulers live? Where did the priests conduct their ceremonies? The answer is, we cannot find them. There are no neighborhoods of sprawling mansions, no citadels with thicker walls and richer goods. The largest houses are only modestly bigger than the rest. There are no royal tombs filled with treasures and sacrificed servants, a gruesome hallmark of contemporary Egypt and Mesopotamia. This absence screams a question about power. How was this vast civilization, spanning over 1 million square kilometers, coordinated without a visible, glorified king? The evidence points to a form of governance that was collective and administrative. Imagine a society run not by a pharaoh claiming to be a god, but by a council of elders or a guild of merchants and planners. Authority may have been vested in a class of literate administrators, the people who used those mysterious seals, who managed trade, standardized weights, and organized labor for civic projects. Their power was demonstrated through the flawless functioning of the city itself, not through personal monuments. It was an authority of bureaucracy, not of personality. This suggests a social structure that was remarkably flat for its time. While there were certainly social divisions, craftsmen, traders, laborers, the gap between the elite and the common people seems far narrower. Wealth was not hoarded and displayed in death, it was invested in the living city. The grandeur was in the grid, the bath, the drain. This makes the Indus Valley an ancient anomaly, a civilization that achieved stunning complexity without the apparent tyranny or theocratic dominance we see everywhere else. Their greatest monument was not a tomb for one, but a home for all. This investment in the common good is perfectly crystallized in a single, serene structure. At the heart of Mohenjo-Daro's raised citadel stands the Great Bath, a masterpiece of ancient engineering and the centerpiece of the entire city. It is a large, rectangular tank, meticulously built from finely fitted bricks and made waterproof by a thick layer of bitumen, a natural tar. A colonnade of brick pillars once surrounded it, suggesting a covered veranda where people could gather. A set of steps leads down into the pool at either end, and an ingenious drain allows the entire tank to be emptied and cleaned. Adjacent rooms, some with their own small bathing platforms, hint at a larger complex of activity. This was clearly a place of immense importance, but its exact purpose remains one of the civilization's most tantalizing puzzles. Was it a sacred site or a civic one? The leading theory sees it as a center for ritual purification. In many ancient and modern cultures, water is a profound symbol of spiritual cleansing. The bath's isolation on the citadel, its sophisticated construction, and the care taken to keep its water uncontaminated all point toward a religious or ceremonial function. Perhaps priests or initiates performed ablutions here before important rituals, or entire communities gathered for seasonal festivals involving water. It could have been a site for initiation rites, marking a person's passage into a new social or religious status. The adjacent rooms might have been used for dressing, preparation, or private ceremonies. Yet another compelling argument frames it as an advanced public utility, the ultimate expression of the Indus obsession with hygiene and social order. In a civilization with a bathroom in nearly every home and a city-wide sewer system, a large communal bath for public use fits perfectly with their practical genius. It could have served as a social hub, a place for people to meet, wash, and converse, blending daily life with a sense of civic belonging. The truth is, we have nothing from the site itself to confirm either idea. No statues of a water deity were found nearby. No inscriptions on the walls explain its use. The great bath stands in eloquent silence, a vessel waiting to be filled with meaning. This absence makes it a powerful symbol of the Indus Valley's enigmatic spiritual life. They built with breathtaking intention, yet they left no pantheon of carved gods, no temples filled with idols. Their spirituality, if that is what we are seeing, was immersive and experiential. It was about the act of cleansing, the gathering of the community, the precise ritual performed in a perfectly engineered space. The water that once filled the bath has long since drained away, taking with it the whispers of the prayers, the chatter of the bathers, the precise reason for its existence. We are left with the empty tank, a monument not to a known god, but to the profound and beautiful mystery of what a civilization held most sacred. This meticulous standardization is visible in every brick and weight. Across an empire that stretched over 1 million square kilometers from the coast of Gujarat to the foothills of the Himalayas, the Indus people achieved something unprecedented. Cities separated by vast distances, like Harappa in the north and Dholavira near the sea, were built using bricks of identical proportions. The ratio of length to width to thickness was a perfect 4:2:1. A brick found in Mohenjo-Daro would fit seamlessly into a wall in a town hundreds of miles away. This was not an accident, it was a conscious, system-wide design principle. The same astonishing uniformity applied to their tools of commerce. Archaeologists have unearthed sets of carefully shaped stone cubes used as weights. These follow a strict binary and decimal system. The smallest unit weighs around 0.875 grams, double that for the next weight, double again, and so on, moving up through 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and up to larger units of 320 and 1364 times the base weight. A merchant in the coastal city of Lothal used the same set of standardized weights as a trader in the northern town of Rakhigarhi. Imagine the practical power of this. It meant that a contract or a trade agreement could be understood from one end of the civilization to the other with no confusion. Even everyday artifacts like the distinctive pottery with its black geometric designs on red slip or the ubiquitous clay carts and figurines share a common family resemblance across the entire region. This is the pan-Indus phenomenon, a cultural homogeneity that persisted for centuries. The mystery is not that they did it, but how they managed it over such an immense and varied landscape without leaving evidence of an iron-fisted, centralized state. Ancient Egypt was bound by the pharaoh, a god-king whose decrees were law, enforced by armies and administrators. Mesopotamia was a patchwork of competing city-states, each with its own king and patron deity. The Indus Valley shows no such signs of centralized, coercive power. There are no grand palaces, no royal iconography, no records of military campaigns or conquered peoples. So what force held this vast, standardized world together? The answer likely lies in a powerful combination of shared ideology and brilliantly efficient practical networks. First, consider trade. The Indus was fundamentally a commercial civilization. Their cities were not just political capitals, they were hubs in an intricate web of exchange that moved lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, carnelian from Gujarat, copper from Rajasthan, and timber from the Himalayas. A universal system of weights and measures was not a luxury, it was the essential grease for this economic machine. It built trust and reduced friction across thousands of miles. A merchant did not need to fear being cheated by an unfamiliar weight scale in a distant city. The system itself was the authority. Second, this points to a unique form of governance. Instead of a pyramid with a king at the top, think of a network or a federation. Authority may have been held by a class of literate merchants, engineers, and ritual specialists, the people who used those undeciphered seals. Their power was not expressed through conquest, but through the maintenance of the system itself. They were the guardians of the standard brick size, the overseers of the weight system, the planners who could lay out a new settlement according to the sacred, or at least the supremely practical, grid. It was a consensus-based authority where adherence to the norms brought prosperity and inclusion in a vast, interconnected community. The shared ideology was not about worshipping a single king god, but about believing in the profound rightness of order, cleanliness, standardization, and communal welfare. This ideology, reinforced by successful trade and a high quality of life, would have been a more powerful unifying force than any army for a society that chose to build great baths instead of great palaces. Their empire was not held together by force, but by a common blueprint for civilization itself. Their common blueprint found its most brilliant expression on the ground. Walking through the excavated streets of Mohenjo-Daro is an experience that feels startlingly modern. The city is laid out in a near-perfect grid, with wide main avenues running north-south and east-west, dividing the metropolis into large blocks. Smaller lanes branch off, providing access to individual homes. This was not a haphazard, organic growth of alleys around a central temple. This was a master plan executed with a surveyor's precision. The streets were not just pathways, they were the backbone of a system more advanced than any seen for the next 2,000 years. Running beneath them, hidden from view, was the civilization's crowning achievement, the world's first comprehensive urban sanitation network. Almost every house, from the most modest to the more spacious, contained a bathing area and a latrine. These were not simple pits. The bathroom floors were paved with bricks set tightly together and sloped toward a corner drain. This drain, a small channel in the floor, connected to a vertical terracotta pipe that dropped through the wall and emptied into a street-level drain. These street drains were marvels of engineering. They were dug deep, lined with carefully laid bricks, and covered with large, flat stone slabs or bricks to create a closed sewer. At regular intervals, manholes were provided for maintenance and cleaning. The entire system was designed with a gentle slope, using gravity to carry wastewater away from residential areas and out of the city. This was not a privilege for the elite, it was a standard civic feature. Imagine a city in the Bronze Age where clean water and waste removal were a universal right, engineered into the very fabric of daily life. Their mastery extended to water supply as well. Cities had numerous public and private wells, built with special wedge-shaped bricks to form a strong, circular shaft. At Dholavira, in the arid region of Kutch, they built a series of massive, interconnected reservoirs carved into the rock to capture every drop of seasonal rainwater, a system of survival that turned a harsh landscape into a livable one. The greatest mystery here is not the sophistication itself, but its sudden appearance. In archaeology, we almost always see a long, messy period of trial and error. A village grows into a town, its streets become crooked, problems of waste and water are solved piecemeal, often poorly. Not so in the Indus Valley. From their very first major cities, this entire integrated system of urban planning and sanitation appears fully formed, as if someone had delivered a perfect architectural template. There is no archaeological record of primitive, experimental drains or chaotic early street layouts. The blueprint was there from the beginning. So where did it come from? Did a single, visionary genius conceive of the perfect city and impose it across a subcontinent? Or was this the culmination of a long period of development that happened somewhere we have not yet discovered, perhaps now buried under millennia of silt or beneath a modern metropolis? This sudden perfection defies the normal story of human progress. It suggests a society that prioritized collective well-being above all else, and possessed an organizational genius so complete that they skipped the centuries of urban growing pains that plagued every other civilization. Their streets were quiet, clean, and orderly, a silent testament to a philosophy we are still struggling to fully understand. These silent, orderly streets lead us directly to their most personal artifacts. Among the countless objects unearthed from the dust of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, nothing captures the imagination quite like the seals. Thousands of these small, square stamps, carved from soft steatite stone and fired to a fine white gloss, have been found. They are intimate objects, often pierced on the back so they could be worn on a cord or pinned to a garment. On one side, they bear that undeciphered line of script. On the other, a deeply carved, intricate image. These are not grand public monuments, they are private symbols, and they form our richest yet most perplexing gallery of Indus Valley art and belief. The most common motif by far is a majestic, stylized bull. This creature stands in profile, often with a single, curved horn, leading archaeologists to colloquially call it the unicorn. It is a powerful, muscular beast, typically shown with a ritual offering stand or incense burner before it. Alongside the unicorn, we see other real animals rendered with careful observation. Humped bulls with a formidable presence, ponderous elephants, charging rhinoceroses, and even crocodiles and tigers. The natural world was clearly central to their symbolic language, but then there are the images that defy simple explanation. Some seals show composite creatures, like a bull with a man's torso, or a human figure with the horns and tail of a bull. These blendings of human and animal hint at a mythology, stories of gods or ancestral beings that we can no longer hear. The most famous and debated of all is the seal known as Pashupati. It depicts a male figure seated cross-legged on a low platform, in a position unmistakably reminiscent of a yoga meditation posture. He has a horned headdress with what might be a cluster of feathers or branches. He is surrounded by animals, a rhinoceros and a buffalo to his right, an elephant and a tiger to his left. Beneath his platform stand two antelope-like creatures. The figure appears to have three faces, or perhaps is shown frontally with his profile visible on both sides, a common artistic convention to show a being who sees all. The posture, the horned crown, the serene mastery over wild animals, it all feels profoundly significant. For many, this seal is a lightning rod for interpretation. One compelling theory links it directly to the later Hindu god Shiva. In historic Hindu tradition, Shiva is known as Pashupati, the lord of animals. He is the supreme yogi, the master ascetic who meditates in the Himalayas, surrounded by and in harmony with the natural world. The horned headdress could be an early form of Shiva's crescent moon. The possibility is tantalizing. Could this be a 4,000-year-old prototype of one of the world's oldest continuous religious figures? Other scholars urge caution. They see a powerful shaman or a priest king, a human mediator who, through ritual and trance, communes with the spirit world of animals. The horns might symbolize a connection to bovine strength and fertility, not a specific deity. The seal could represent a mythical ancestor or a cultural hero whose story is lost. What we are seeing is a powerful icon, but its precise name and story evaporated millennia ago. The function of these seals is slightly clearer, though still debated. Most bear that short line of script, likely indicating a name, a title, or a clan affiliation. Their backs are often smooth from wear, suggesting they were pressed repeatedly into soft clay. They were almost certainly used in trade and administration to mark bundles of goods, seal storage jars, or denote ownership. A merchant would press his unique seal into a clay tag attached to a shipment of cloth or grain. It was a signature, a brand, a guarantee. This means every seal was a personal identifier, a piece of corporate or individual identity, and that makes their imagery even more profound. The symbol you choose to represent yourself to the world is deeply personal. That so many people chose the serene, powerful unicorn, or that a select few might have chosen the awe-inspiring Pashupati figure, tells us about the values and spiritual landscape of the society. The animals likely represented clans, professions, or protective spirits. The mythical scenes might have encoded family legends or divine patronage. These tiny stone squares are therefore a double mystery. They are functional tools of a practical civilization, yet they are covered in symbols from a rich, unrecorded inner world. They are our primary window, but the glass is thick, frosted, and we are left pressing our faces against it, trying to make out the shapes moving in the light on the other side. While the seals were intimate symbols of identity, the Indus people also carved their script into the public eye. Far to the south, in the arid salt flats of modern Gujarat, lies the lost city of Dholavira. This site stands apart, a testament to the civilization's incredible adaptability. Where Mohenjo-Daro thrived by the Indus, Dholavira was built on a rocky island in a seasonal marsh, a place of brutal heat and scarce rainfall. To survive, its inhabitants became masters of water conservation. They carved a series of massive, interconnected reservoirs directly into the rock, channels and dams designed to capture every precious drop of monsoon rain. These reservoirs are staggering in scale, some large enough to be mistaken for natural lakes, and they turned a parched landscape into a livable fortress. The city itself was meticulously divided into three distinct parts: a raised citadel, a middle town, and a lower town, each enclosed within massive stone walls, suggesting a highly stratified social order visible in the very layout of the streets. But Dholavira's most breathtaking contribution to the Indus mystery is not its waterworks, but a message left at its gate. At the northern entrance to the citadel, archaeologists made a find unlike any other. They discovered 10 large symbols of the Indus script, each nearly 40 centimeters high, carved from white gypsum and once fitted into a wooden background that has long since rotted away. This was no small handheld seal. This was a grand public signboard positioned for all to see as they entered the most important district of the city. Imagine walking through that gateway 4,000 years ago, looking up to see these gleaming white symbols announcing something of supreme importance. The contrast is electrifying. For a script we only know from tiny, private objects, this is a shout in a world of whispers. What could this sign have said? Its public placement and monumental size suggest it was a proclamation, not a trade receipt. It might have proudly displayed the city's ancient name, a declaration like "Welcome to Dholavira" for all visitors and residents to see. It could have been a dedicatory inscription naming the ruler or the patron god of the citadel, or perhaps it held a warning, a code of law, or a sacred mantra to be seen and acknowledged by everyone passing through. The very existence of this signboard shatters the assumption that the Indus script was solely for administrative stamping. Here, it was used for public communication, for civic pride, for permanent display. This means the script had a monumental function. It was meant to be read, or at least recognized, by a literate or semi-literate public. The people of Dholavira went to extraordinary effort to craft this message, mining the gypsum, carving each symbol with care, and installing it prominently. They believed these signs were important enough for everyone to see, and yet, standing before its replica today, we are in the same position as an ancient traveler who never learned to read. We see the powerful symbols, we sense their authority, but their specific meaning is just out of reach. The Dholavira signboard does not solve the script's riddle. Instead, it amplifies it, turning a private code into a public monument and making its silence all the more profound. The gleaming signboard of Dholavira proclaimed authority, but whose authority was it? The absence of obvious kings and emperors forces us to confront one of the Indus Valley's most defining puzzles, its social structure. In every other early civilization, power is written in stone and gold. In Egypt, the pharaoh's pyramid towers over the landscape, a statement of absolute god-like supremacy. In Mesopotamia, the ziggurat and the palace complex dominate the city, with cuneiform tablets detailing the exploits of kings like Gilgamesh. The Indus Valley offers none of this. There are no monumental statues of rulers, no grand palaces with throne rooms, no inscriptions boasting of military conquests. Even in death, they refuse to proclaim individual glory. The burials we have found, primarily at sites like Harappa and Kalibangan, are strikingly modest. Most are simple pit burials. The body is laid out, often with the head to the north, accompanied by a few personal ornaments, a bead necklace, a few pottery vessels, perhaps a copper mirror. There is no evidence of the lavish grave goods found in Egyptian tombs, no sacrificed servants or warriors buried to serve a ruler in the afterlife. No hordes of jewelry or weapons signaling immense accumulated wealth. This simplicity in death speaks volumes about life. It suggests a society where extreme, ostentatious inequality was either not the norm or was culturally forbidden. The same story is told by the cities of the living. While there is variation in housing, some homes are larger with courtyards and multiple rooms, while others are smaller, single-room dwellings. The disparity is not cavernous. There are no sprawling palace complexes set apart on vast estates, no slums of hovels pressed against mighty walls. The larger houses are simply integrated into the same city blocks, sharing the same access to the superb water and drainage systems. The quality of construction is consistently high across neighborhoods. So, if there was no single, all-powerful king and no sharply divided class of ultra-wealthy elites, how was this vast, standardized civilization run? Who made the decisions that planned entire cities, coordinated trade across continents, and maintained that perfect civic order for centuries? Scholars have proposed several models, each as intriguing as it is difficult to prove. The first is the theocracy, a rule by priest-kings. The evidence here is circumstantial but compelling. The Great Bath, the possible ritual significance of the seals, and the apparent lack of military fortifications all point to a society where religious or ideological authority might have been paramount. Perhaps a class of literate priests, the ones who understood the sacred script and performed the purifying rituals, also held administrative power. They would have been guardians of tradition and cosmic order, their authority derived from their connection to the divine rather than from brute force. The Pashupati seal figure could represent such a high priest or a proto-deity at the center of this system. A second, very different model is the merchant oligarchy. The Indus civilization was at its heart a network of trade. The standardized weights, the seals used for marking goods, the widespread distribution of raw materials like carnelian and lapis lazuli all point to a sophisticated commercial economy. It is entirely plausible that the most powerful people were not priests or warriors, but the heads of great merchant houses and guilds. These individuals would have controlled the flow of wealth, organized craft production, and financed the civic infrastructure that made trade possible. Their power was economic, and their governance would have been focused on maintaining the stability and efficiency necessary for commerce to flourish. Their monuments were not statues, but the warehouses, docks, and orderly markets. A third and most radical idea is a form of early democracy or consensus-based rule. The remarkable homogeneity and lack of centralized coercion could suggest a collective leadership. Imagine a council of elders representing different city quarters, or an assembly of leading families from various professions: merchants, engineers, landowners, priests. Major decisions might have been made through debate and consensus, with authority rotating or being shared. This would explain the absence of a single ruler's palace and the investment in public goods that benefited the entire community. The grid plan and the sanitation system were the physical manifestations of a social contract, not a royal decree. The truth is, we may be seeing a blend of all these models. Governance might have been a subtle, layered system where priestly, mercantile, and civic authority intertwined, checked and balanced by tradition and the practical needs of a vast, interconnected society. The real mystery is not that we cannot find a king's tomb, but that a civilization of such scale and duration thrived without feeling the need to build one. Their greatest legacy might be the quiet suggestion that another way was possible. That subtle, consensus-based power structure was fueled by connections stretching far beyond the Indian subcontinent. The Indus Valley was not an isolated wonder, it was a central hub in a Bronze Age global economy. Archaeologists have traced a web of trade routes that linked its cities to distant and powerful civilizations. The most compelling evidence comes not from India but from Iraq. In the ruins of ancient Mesopotamian cities like and Lagash, cuneiform tablets, the meticulous records of scribes repeatedly mention a land called Meluha. This was a distant source of exotic luxury goods, and scholars are now virtually certain that Meluha was the Indus Valley Civilization itself. The Mesopotamians wrote of ships from Meluha docking at their ports carrying wondrous cargo. This is not just speculation, the physical proof is in the ground. In Mesopotamian royal tombs, archaeologists have found beautifully crafted beads made of bright orange carnelian, a semi-precious stone. Chemical analysis shows this carnelian came from the mines of Gujarat, in the heart of the Indus region. The craftsmanship is distinctively Indus, etched with white patterns using a sophisticated alkaline technique. Similarly, the vivid blue lapis lazuli found in Indus cities originated from a single, remote source, the mines of Badakhshan in modern Afghanistan. This stone traveled over 1,000 miles to reach the workshops of Harappa, where it was shaped into beads and inlays. The trade list is a catalogue of ancient luxury and necessity. Timber, likely teak or cedar from the Himalayan foothills, floated down rivers. Cotton, which the Indus people may have been the first to spin and weave into cloth, was a revolutionary textile export. Ivory from local elephants and perhaps even live animals were likely part of this exchange. But how was this vast, intercontinental commerce managed? Here lies a practical mystery. Was trade a state monopoly organized by that unseen administrative class that standardized weights and bricks, or was it driven by daring, independent merchant families? The evidence tilts intriguingly. The ubiquitous seals used to mark bundles of goods suggest individual or clan ownership, pointing to private enterprise. A merchant would press his unique unicorn seal into the clay ceiling of a jar or a bale of cloth, marking it as his property for the journey. This feels like the tool of a free market, not a state bureaucracy. Yet, the extreme standardization of weights across the entire civilization implies a regulatory framework that everyone agreed to, a system that enabled trust across vast distances. It was likely a hybrid, a regulated free market where merchants operated within a strong, consensus-driven system of rules. This leads to the puzzle of payment. In Mesopotamia, silver by weight was the common medium of exchange. In Egypt, grain served as a currency, but in the Indus Valley, we find no hoards of silver, no evidence of a standardized coinage or ingot. So what did they use? The answer might be that they traded good for good, a complex barter system facilitated by those trusted weights. A boatload of cotton textiles from Lothal might be exchanged in Oman for copper, which was then traded in Mesopotamia for more silver, which could be brought home. The standardized weights made these multi-step transactions possible, as every commodity could be assigned a mutually understood value. Some scholars also suggest that perishable goods like grain, measured in those standardized volumes from the large civic granaries, could have served as a kind of internal currency. The trade itself was a feat of logistics. Overland caravans with pack animals navigated mountain passes into Central Asia, but the most dramatic routes were by sea. From the great dockyard at Lothal, with its engineered brick-lock gates to control water levels, deep-hulled wooden ships would have coasted along the Arabian Sea. They likely island-hopped across the Persian Gulf to reach the mouths of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. These voyages were epic undertakings lasting months, guided by stars and monsoons. Each ship carried not just goods but ideas, technologies, and cultural influences. The Indus civilization was plugged into the ancient world, its prosperity built on a network of connections that makes its eventual inward retreat and silence all the more poignant. Their far-flung trade supplied the raw materials for a quiet industrial revolution. While the Indus people built no pyramids, their true monuments were forged in fire and carved from stone on a miniature, breathtaking scale. Their mastery of materials reveals a technological prowess that was subtle, precise, and in many ways unmatched in the ancient world. They worked with a portfolio of metals, smelting copper, alloying it with tin or arsenic to create bronze, and even using lead and gold for specific purposes. But it is not the mere presence of these metals that astonishes, it is the artistry and sophistication with which they were shaped. Take the iconic bronze statuette from Mohenjo-Daro known as the Dancing Girl. She stands just 10 centimeters tall, a figure of defiant confidence cast over 4,000 years ago. Her arms are akimbo, one resting on her hip, the other dangling loosely, adorned with a stack of bangles. She is naked except for a necklace and an elaborate hairstyle piled high on her head. The artistry is in the casual realism, the sense of motion captured in a static metal. She is not a stiff, formal deity, but a living person. This effect was achieved through the lost wax casting technique, a complex process that reveals their advanced understanding. An artist would first sculpt the figure in beeswax, capturing every delicate detail of her posture and ornaments. This wax model was then coated in several layers of fine clay to create a mold with small vents carefully inserted. The entire mold was fired, melting the wax out and leaving a hollow cavity. Molten bronze was then poured into this cavity, filling every crevice. Once cooled, the clay mold was broken away to reveal the metal figure inside. The mystery deepens when you examine the casting itself. The bronze wall of the statuette is astonishingly thin and perfectly even, a testament to a controlled, high-temperature pour and a flawless mold. This is not primitive metalwork, it is the product of generations of refined craft. Their skill extended to larger, functional objects as well. Archaeologists have found exquisite models of covered carts and chariots, also cast in bronze or copper, complete with detailed wheels and pivoting axles. These were not toys, but likely ceremonial objects or precise models for full-sized vehicles, demonstrating an understanding of rotational mechanics. But perhaps their most jaw-dropping technical feats were performed on stone. The Indus artisans are famous for their long, barrel-shaped carnelian beads. The stone itself, a hard quartz, glows with a deep orange-red hue, but the true marvel is the drilling. These beads, some over 10 centimeters long, were perforated by a hole drilled lengthwise through their entire center. The hole is incredibly narrow, sometimes less than a millimeter in diameter, and perfectly straight. Drilling such a long, fine channel through one of the hardest stones known to the ancient world seems almost impossible. How did they do it? The leading theory involves a technique using a copper drill bit and a special abrasive. The craftsman would have used a bow drill, a tool that spins the bit back and forth. But copper is softer than carnelian. It could not cut the stone directly. The secret was the abrasive, a powder of an even harder material, likely crushed corundum, which is the mineral that forms rubies and sapphires. The craftsman would mix this ultra-hard powder with oil, creating a slurry. The copper drill bit spinning in its bow would then grind this abrasive slurry against the stone, slowly, patiently wearing a microscopic hole. This process would have taken hours, perhaps days, for a single bead, requiring immense skill to keep the drill perfectly centered and the pressure consistent. The result is a bead of such perfection that it became a coveted luxury item across Mesopotamia. This technological mystery is not about having a secret tool, but about possessing a profound, accumulated body of knowledge. It was a science of materials. They knew which stones were harder than others, which abrasives to use, how to achieve and sustain the high temperatures needed for thin-walled casting. This knowledge was not written down in any manual we can find. It was passed from master to apprentice through centuries of practice. Their genius was not in grand declarations, but in the steady hand of a drill operator, the careful eye of a wax sculptor, the patient breath keeping a furnace at just the right heat. In a civilization that left no portraits of its kings, these tiny, perfect objects are the true portraits of its people, captured in bronze and stone. Yet this mastery of craft and trade did not appear from nothing. The brilliant, fully formed cities of the Indus Valley pose a profound question of origin. How does a society leap from simple farming villages to a complex, continent-spanning civilization in what seems, archaeologically, like the blink of an eye? The search for an answer takes us to a windswept site in modern Pakistan called Mehenjo-Daro. Here, beginning around 7,000 years before the Common Era, we find the roots of the story. Mehenjo-Daro was a Neolithic settlement, a community of farmers who cultivated wheat and barley and domesticated animals like sheep, goats, and cattle. They lived in mud brick houses, crafted simple pottery, and even engaged in early trade, as evidenced by shells from the distant coast. For thousands of years, Mehenjo-Daro and settlements like it represent a slow, steady evolution. The people were developing the essential toolkit of settled life. Then comes the gap and the mystery. Around 3,300 years before the Common Era, the archaeological record in the region becomes frustratingly sparse. It is as if the scene fades to black, and then, a few centuries later, the lights come up on a completely new stage. The mature, spectacular cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, with their grids, their scripts, and their sewers already in full swing. This apparent jump has fueled a century of debate. Did the Indus civilization emerge from a gradual, indigenous evolution, or was it sparked by a sudden outside influence, a cultural spark from Mesopotamia? The indigenous model argues that the gap is an illusion, a problem of archaeology. We simply have not found enough sites from that transitional period. The seeds of everything we see in the mature cities, proponents say, were already present in places like Mehenjo-Daro. The mud brick architecture, the farming practices, the long-distance trade networks. Over centuries, these elements slowly coalesced, with populations growing, technologies refining, and social structures becoming more complex. The urbanization was not a sudden invention, but the tipping point of a long, internal process. The rival theory looks westward. At the very time the Indus cities were forming, the civilizations of Mesopotamia, in what is now Iraq, were already ancient and glorious. They had writing, monumental architecture, and vast trade networks. Could contact with this advanced culture have acted as a catalyst, providing a blueprint or a demand that accelerated development in the Indus region? The evidence of trade is undeniable, as we have seen with Meluha, but trade does not equal origin. While Mesopotamian ideas might have influenced specific technologies or artistic motifs, the core of the Indus civilization, its unique script, its non-monumental civic planning, its distinct social structure, feels fundamentally homegrown. The truth likely lies in a powerful synthesis. Imagine the indigenous communities, already sophisticated and networked, coming into sustained contact with the ideas and demands of the wider Bronze Age world. This contact would not have been a one-way street. the resource-rich Indus region had much to offer. The need to organize production for export, to standardize goods for foreign markets, to manage the wealth flowing in. These practical pressures could have been the very catalyst that pushed local chieftains or councils to develop more complex administration, to plan more efficient cities, to invent a script for record-keeping. The spark was not a foreign blueprint for a ziggurat, but the economic and social friction of becoming a global player. It was a revolution born from connection. The rapid urbanization might have been a deliberate solution to new problems of scale, a conscious social experiment in creating order to harness opportunity. So we are left with a civilization that is neither a pure, isolated creation nor a simple copy of its neighbors. It is a unique answer, forged in the crucible of its own land and the fires of an interconnected ancient world. The gap in the record remains, but it now hums with the possibility of frantic, purposeful innovation, a society racing to build a world worthy of its newfound place upon the stage. Who are the people who walk these clean, well-planned streets? Beneath the bricks and seals lies a deeply human mystery, one that has been twisted by politics and only now is being untangled by science. In the early days of discovery, colonial-era archaeologists looked at the sophisticated ruins and struggled to fit them into their worldview. They could not believe that the ancestors of the modern Indian population, whom they viewed through a lens of prejudice, could have built something so advanced. So they invented a story. They proposed that the Indus Valley was founded by a mythical race from the west, perhaps from Mesopotamia or even further, a superior people who were later overrun by nomadic Aryan invaders from the north. This Aryan invasion theory was never just archaeology. It was a racial narrative used to explain and justify colonial rule, suggesting that Indian civilization itself was the product of outside, European-like peoples. These discredited ideas cast a long, dark shadow over the search for the Indus people's identity. Modern research has thrown those old theories aside, not with new stories, but with hard, physical evidence from the people themselves. The first clues come from their bones. Anthropologists have studied hundreds of skeletal remains from Harappa and other sites. The analysis reveals a diverse population, with a range of physical features common to the broader South Asian region. There is no evidence of a sudden, mass replacement of people, no skeletal record that shows one distinct physical type being wiped out by another. The story told by bones is one of continuity, not rupture. But the most revolutionary evidence has emerged from the molecules within those bones, from ancient DNA. In a landmark study published in 2019, scientists successfully sequenced the genome of an individual from the Indus Valley site of Rakhigarhi, a woman who lived between 2,500 and 2,300 years before the Common Era. Her genetic data is a time capsule, and what it revealed was stunning. First, it showed that she carried a distinct ancestry that was a mixture of two ancient groups, hunter-gatherers from Iran, and a population related to ancient hunter-gatherers from South Asia itself. This unique genetic signature is the bedrock of the Indus Valley Civilization. Second, and crucially, her genome showed no significant ancestry from the steppe pastoralists, the so-called Aryans from the Eurasian grasslands whose genes flow widely into Europe and South Asia in later millennia. This finding was a seismic blow to the old invasion narrative. The people of the mature Indus Valley were not steppe migrants. They were indigenous to the region, the product of a deep local history. The genetic data paints a powerful new picture. It suggests that the major source of ancestry for modern South Asians comes from this very Indus population, mixed later with steppe-related groups who arrived after the civilization's decline and with other regional influences. The people of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro are, in a very real genetic sense, the ancestors of millions in South Asia today. Yet, for all this clarity, a profound question remains stubbornly open. Genetics can tell us about biological ancestry, but it cannot tell us what language they spoke or what they called themselves. Did they speak an early form of a Dravidian language like Tamil or Telugu, whose roots are ancient in the subcontinent? Or was theirs a language lost to time, a tongue that vanished when their cities faded, leaving only those cryptic symbols behind? The DNA evidence makes the old Aryan invasion led to Sanskrit theory for the Indus people impossible, but it does not hand us a dictionary. The woman from Rakhigarhi sits at the center of this enigma, her genetic code a clear message of origin, yet her voice, her words, and the name of her people are still carried away on the same silent wind that swept through their empty streets. That genetic silence echoes in their sacred spaces. To reconstruct the spiritual world of the Indus people is to assemble a puzzle where most of the pieces are missing and the picture on the box is lost. We have no temples, no prayer texts, no names of gods carved in stone. Instead, we have a collection of enigmatic objects and structures that whisper of a rich, complex belief system just beyond our understanding. The most common religious artifacts are the terracotta figurines, particularly those of women. Found in homes and public spaces, these small clay statues often depict a female with elaborate headdresses, heavy hips, and prominent breasts. Many were originally painted. For decades, these were confidently labeled mother goddess figures, symbols of fertility and a primeval earth mother cult. It is a compelling and intuitive idea, connecting them to similar figurines found across the ancient world. But modern archaeology urges caution. Could some of these simply be toys, popular art, or representations of everyday women? Without context, their divine status is an assumption, not a proven fact. Yet their frequent discovery suggests they held significant meaning, perhaps as household guardians or votive offerings for blessings of health and family. A more provocative clue comes in the form of certain conical or phallic-shaped stones found at sites like Harappa. To many observers, these bear a striking resemblance to the lingam, the aniconic symbol of the Hindu god Shiva that is worshipped in millions of temples today. The potential link to the Pashupati seal is tantalizing, suggesting an early, pre-Vedic form of Shiva worship that combined the yogic lord of animals with a symbolic representation of creative energy. But again, we cannot be certain. These stones could be architectural pieces, grinding tools, or symbols for a completely different deity. The absence of an explanatory inscription turns every potential sacred object into a question. More concrete evidence of ritual comes from the site of Kalibangan. Here, archaeologists uncovered a series of raised brick platforms in the citadel area. On these platforms were found ash, charcoal, and remains of cattle bones. Most strikingly, the platforms contained clay linings and pits filled with sacrificial ashes. These are almost certainly fire altars. Similar structures have been found in later Vedic and Hindu traditions, used for the sacred fire ritual known as yajna. This provides a tangible link between Indus practices and the religious continuum of India. It suggests a ritualistic tradition involving fire offerings, possibly to deities or ancestral spirits, that may have persisted for millennia. The treatment of the dead offers another fragmented window into their beliefs. The Indus people practiced both burial and a form of post-cremation collection. In cemeteries at Harappa and Lothal, we find careful inhumation burials with bodies laid out in a north-south orientation, often accompanied by personal pottery and jewelry. This suggests a belief in an afterlife where such goods might be needed. But at other sites like Mohenjo-Daro, evidence points to a different practice. Archaeologists found collections of human bones and ash placed in large burial urns along with more grave goods. This indicates cremation, followed by the careful gathering and interment of the remains. This diversity in practice itself is a clue, hinting at different social groups, statuses, or evolving beliefs about the journey of the soul. Perhaps most pervasive is the evidence for a deep reverence for the natural world, a kind of sacred ecology. The animals that dominate the seals, the powerful bull, the serene elephant, the fierce tiger, were likely more than just artistic subjects. They probably represented clan totems, vehicles of deities, or symbols of divine attributes. The frequent depiction of a fig tree, likely the sacred pipal or ashvatha tree, on seals points to the veneration of specific plants, a practice that continues powerfully in Hinduism and Buddhism today. The Great Bath itself can be seen as a monumental shrine to the purifying power of water. So what can we conclude from this mosaic of clues? We see a spirituality that was likely polytheistic or animistic, deeply embedded in the cycles of nature and the practicalities of life and death. It involved domestic veneration, communal fire rituals, and perhaps pilgrimages to sacred baths or trees. The core, frustrating mystery is that without texts, we are observers of the ritual, but never participants in the belief. We can see the altar, but we do not know the prayer that was spoken over it. We can hold the figurine, but we cannot hear the name of the goddess it might represent. Their cosmology, their concept of the divine, the very stories that gave meaning to their universe, have evaporated, leaving behind only the physical shells of their faith. The sacred and the practical met on high ground. In almost every major Indus city, the careful grid is punctuated by a dramatic architectural feature, a raised, heavily walled sector known today as the Citadel. At Mohenjo-Daro, it is a massive mud brick platform artificially constructed to tower over the surrounding plains. At Harappa and Kalibangan, similar raised areas are fortified with imposing walls of baked brick, thick and formidable. These citadels were not afterthoughts, they were central to the city's design, often built on the western side, commanding the landscape. Their very presence speaks of a need for separation, for control, for security. But security from what? This is where the mystery solidifies into brick and mortar. The classic interpretation, drawn from parallels in other ancient cultures, is that these were defensive strongholds. The thick walls, the elevated position offering a clear view for sentries, the limited access points, all seem to shout fortress. They suggest a society under threat, a people who needed a final redoubt against enemies. Yet, when archaeologists search for evidence of those enemies, the trail goes cold. The Indus Valley has yielded a startling lack of the typical artifacts of war. Compared to the armories of Mesopotamia or the chariots of Egypt, finds of weapons are rare and utilitarian, simple copper spearheads and arrowheads that could as easily be used for hunting. There are no hordes of swords, no depictions of soldiers in battle on their seals, no relief showing conquered foes. The city walls themselves, while substantial, often enclose the entire settlement, not just the citadel, and lack the complex, projecting bastions designed for defensive warfare seen in later fortifications. If the citadels were military castles, where is the army? The absence forces a profound reconsideration. Perhaps these structures were never meant to repel human armies. Their imposing nature might have served a very different purpose. One compelling theory recasts the citadel as the ultimate administrative and ritual center. This is where we find the Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro, the granaries of Harappa, the fire altars of Kalibangan. These were not barracks, they were the city's sacred and economic heart. The high walls and limited access would then control not against invaders, but regulate the flow of people into the most important spaces. Imagine a serene, elevated district where priests, administrators, and perhaps a ruling council performed the rituals and managed the stores that sustained the entire city. The walls created a boundary between the sacred and the profane, the realm of authority and the bustle of daily commerce below. In this light, the citadel becomes a symbol of ideological power, not military might. Its elevation was spiritual and social, lifting the core institutions above the common plane, making them visible yet separate, accessible yet exclusive. The walls were a statement of prestige and order, a physical manifestation of the social hierarchy that must have existed, even if it was not flaunted in gold and palaces. They protected not people from violence, but the sacred mechanisms of the civilization from disruption. A third, practical idea suggests they were primarily giant protective platforms for the city's most vital resource, grain. The massive granaries found on the citadels were the civilization's insurance policy against famine. Elevating them on a baked brick platform protected the harvest from seasonal floods and pests. The strong walls around the entire complex would then guard against theft or social unrest in lean times, securing the food supply that guaranteed stability. So, were they forts, temples, or warehouses? The frustrating, fascinating answer is likely all three, blended into a single, multifunctional acropolis. They provided physical security for grain, controlled access to ritual spaces, and projected the authority of the unseen governing class. The mystery of the citadels is that they look like they should tell a story of conflict, but the story they actually tell might be one of profound internal order, a society that built its greatest walls not to keep others out, but to carefully guard the sources of its own continuity. Behind the citadel walls and the grand civic works, the true heartbeat of the civilization pulsed in its neighborhoods. While we search in vain for kings, the story of the common people is written in the humbler ruins of their homes and the small objects they left behind. Archaeology peels back the layers of dirt to reveal a surprisingly detailed and often relatable portrait of daily life in the Indus Valley. Their diet was robust and varied. Farmers cultivated wheat and barley as staple grains, along with peas, lentils, and chickpeas. They grew sesame for oil and dates for sweetness. Evidence from teeth and cooking pots shows they also enjoyed meat, likely from cattle, sheep, goats, and chickens. Perhaps most significantly, they were masters of dairy. Chemical analysis of pottery shards has revealed traces of milk fats, proving they kept herds for milk, which they may have turned into yogurt or ghee, a culinary tradition that stretches unbroken for millennia in the region. A typical family lived in a modest, multi-room house built from those famous standardized bricks. The entrance would often lead into a courtyard, a private open space for chores, cooking, and socializing. Rooms were arranged around this courtyard, some for sleeping, others for storage. Almost every home had its own well and a dedicated bathing area with a proper drain, a luxury of cleanliness that would not be seen again in many parts of the world for thousands of years. The floors were of packed earth, sometimes plastered smooth, and the roofs were likely made of wooden beams covered with reeds and clay. It was a simple, functional, and remarkably sanitary living space. Within these homes, we find echoes of personal life, especially of children. Archaeologists have uncovered small, terracotta carts with solid wheels pulled by toy bulls. These were not just models, they were playthings. There are tiny pottery animals, marbles, and whistles shaped like birds that still produce a clear, sharp sound when blown. Most charmingly, they have found dice, cubical and numbered with dots exactly like modern dice, made from pottery or bone. These objects tell us that childhood 4,000 years ago was filled with the same simple joys, racing little carts, playing games of chance, and blowing whistles in the streets. For adults, work defined the day. The cities hummed with craft industries. Potters turned their wheels to produce masses of sturdy red pottery, often decorated with black painted designs of peacocks, pipal leaves, or geometric patterns. Spinners and weavers worked with cotton, a plant they may have been the first to domesticate, creating lightweight textiles that were a prized export. But the most revered artisans were the bead makers. In workshops, craftsmen would take rough chunks of carnelian, steatite, or faience, and with astonishing patience, shape them into perfect beads, drill them with those impossibly fine holes, and polish them to a brilliant shine. This was not just a job, it was a high art form. Yet, for all this vivid detail, a profound silence remains. We know what they ate, but not their favorite recipe. We know the layout of their homes, but not the conversations held in the courtyard at dusk. We hold the dice they rolled, but we do not know the rules of their game or the laughter that followed a lucky throw. We have no personal letters expressing love or anxiety, no diaries recording a bad harvest or the birth of a child, no names of individuals outside of those cryptic symbols on seals. The common person is a silhouette. We see the outline of their life, the shape of their days, but the inner world, their hopes, their fears, their jokes, their private sorrows, is utterly lost. This is the most human of the Indus mysteries. We can reconstruct their civilization, but we cannot recover a single, ordinary voice from the crowd that once filled those clean, straight streets with noise. This precise geometry of daily life was built on a foundation of invisible mathematics. The Indus Valley's genius for order went far beyond straight streets. It was encoded into the very fabric of their material world through a system of measurement of breathtaking consistency. Take a brick from Mohenjo-Daro and another from a small town hundreds of miles away, and you will find they share the exact same proportions. The length, width, and thickness follow a perfect ratio of 4:2:1. This was not a happy coincidence. It was a universal standard, a rule followed from the Himalayas to the Arabian Sea. The implications are staggering. It means builders across an entire civilization, who likely never met or communicated directly, were working from the same architectural blueprint. A bricklayer in the north knew that his bricks would fit perfectly with those made in the south, enabling the rapid, reliable construction of everything from houses to city walls. This standardization required a shared system of linear measurement. Archaeologists believe they used units based on a foot, roughly 13.2 inches, and a cubit, about 20.8 inches. These measures are found repeatedly in the dimensions of buildings and streets, but the true masterpiece of their mathematical mind was not in length but in weight. The stone cubes they used as weights, discovered in markets and homes, reveal a system of elegant, logical precision. The smallest unit weighs approximately 0.875 grams. From there, the system scales up in a beautiful pattern. The next weights are 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and 64 times that base unit, following a binary progression. Then, at the 64-unit mark, the system shifts seamlessly into a decimal mode. The next major weight is 160 units, then 320, 640, 1,600, and so on. This is not a haphazard collection of stones. It is a carefully designed, integrated numerical system. A merchant in the coastal city of Lothal could weigh out a quantity of cotton using a 16-unit weight, and a trader in distant Harappa could verify it with an identical stone cube, with no argument over fairness. This was the bedrock of their vast commercial trust network. The mystery deepens when we look at town planning. The cities were laid out on cardinal directions, north-south and east-west, with an accuracy that implies the use of advanced surveying tools. They likely used a simple but effective instrument called a groma, a cross of wood with plumb lines, to sight right angles and straight lines across vast distances. The perfect grids of Mohenjo-Daro and Kalibangan are not just orderly, they are geometric proofs executed on a monumental scale. Some researchers even see evidence of a standard unit of area, a Indus yard, used to plan entire city blocks. So we have a civilization with a unified system for length, weight, and area. The knowledge itself is impressive, but the real enigma is its transmission and enforcement. How do you make sure every brickmaker, every merchant, every town planner across 1 million square kilometers follows the same rules century after century? There were no printing presses to distribute manuals, no central police to inspect weights and measures. The answer must lie in the very structure of their society. This mathematical uniformity was probably a core part of Indus ideology, as sacred as any religious belief. Learning the standard ratios would have been a fundamental step in the training of any craftsman or merchant, passed from master to apprentice. The governing class, whether priests or administrators, would have been the guardians of these standards. They might have held the master sets of weights, the official measuring rods, and sanctioned the production of new ones. Using an incorrect weight in a market might have been a social or religious transgression, not just a commercial cheat. The system's sheer practical success would have reinforced its use. When everyone uses the same rules, trade flows smoothly, construction is faster, and trust is built. The mathematics were not an abstract science for them. They were the practical language of a civilization that believed in harmony, balance, and flawless function. Their greatest equation was not written on clay. It was built into every brick, weighed in every market, and etched into the straight lines of every street, a silent testament to a world ruled by number. Their mathematical precision found its ultimate expression not in counting, but in capturing every drop of rain. In the harsh, salt-crusted landscape of Kodia Bet, an island in the Great Rann of Kutch, the city of Dholavira performed what seemed like an act of defiance against nature itself. While other Indus cities thrived along mighty rivers, Dholavira was built in a semi-arid desert where rainfall was seasonal and unreliable. To survive, its people became hydrological architects of staggering ambition. They did not just dig wells, they transformed their entire city into a giant, intricate water catchment machine. The system began with the very shape of the settlement. Dholavira was built on a gentle slope between two seasonal streams. The entire city, from its highest citadel to its lower town, was enclosed within massive stone walls. But these walls were more than just defenses. They were the first component of the water plan. The architects designed the settlement so that these perimeter walls acted as dams, channeling the precious monsoon runoff away from the streets and toward a series of colossal carved reservoirs. Archaeologists have identified at least 16 of these reservoirs strategically placed around the city. Some were massive, cut directly into the bedrock, while others were constructed by building strong retaining walls. They were lined with finely dressed stone blocks, fitted together without mortar yet sealed so effectively they could hold water for months. The scale is almost incomprehensible. The largest reservoirs are stadium-sized, with some estimates suggesting the entire network could hold millions upon millions of liters of water. This was not a haphazard collection of ponds, it was a coordinated, gravity-fed system. Canals and channels, also lined with stone, linked the reservoirs in a cascading sequence. During the fierce monsoon rains, water from the catchment areas and diverted streams would flow into the highest reservoirs. As these filled, excess water would be channeled to the next lower tank, and so on, ensuring not a single drop was wasted. Gates and spillways allowed for controlled release and distribution for agriculture and daily use. The entire city was planned around this hydraulic heartbeat. The mystery here is twofold, a puzzle of knowledge and a puzzle of will. First, the engineering knowledge required was profound. The builders of Dholavira had to understand geology to know where the bedrock was solid enough to carve. They mastered hydrology, calculating catchment areas, flow rates, and evaporation levels to determine the size and placement of each tank. They practiced advanced masonry, creating watertight seals in stone that have lasted 4,000 years. This was applied science of the highest order, knowledge that was clearly accumulated, tested, and perfected over generations. But the second, perhaps greater mystery is social. The construction and maintenance of this system represented a titanic communal effort. Quarrying and dressing those countless stone blocks, carving the reservoirs out of living rock, digging and lining miles of channels, this would have required the organized labor of thousands of people, working not for a season but for decades. It speaks of a society with an extraordinary degree of social cohesion and long-term vision. Every citizen, from the governor to the potter, would have understood that their survival depended on the integrity of those stone-lined tanks. Maintaining the channels, clearing silt after each monsoon, ensuring the gates functioned, this was a perpetual civic duty. Dholavira's water system is therefore more than a technical marvel, it is a monument to a collective bargain. The people agreed to dedicate a vast portion of their wealth and labor not to a king's tomb, but to a network of quiet stone basins that would hold the future itself. In this desert city, water was not just a resource, it was the physical manifestation of their social contract, a shared belief in planning, cooperation, and the common good that turned a barren island into a fortress of life. But this mastery of stone and water was matched by a surprising, intimate care for the human body itself. Deep in the roots of this civilization, at the Neolithic site of Mehrgarh, archaeologists made a discovery that sends a shiver down the spine. They unearthed a grave from around 9,000 years ago, long before the rise of the great cities, containing the remains of a man. When they examined his skull, they found something extraordinary. Two of his molar teeth, the chewing teeth at the back of the jaw, bore perfectly drilled holes. The holes were small, conical, and precise, reaching into the pulp chamber of the tooth. This was not damage from eating hard food or ritual decoration. The placement and shape indicate a deliberate, skilled procedure. This person, living at the dawn of settled life in the region, had undergone primitive dentistry. The purpose seems clear: to relieve the agony of a toothache, likely caused by an abscess or severe decay. The dentist, if we can call them that, would have used a small, bow-driven flint drill, the same tool used for crafting beads. They would have worked on a living, conscious patient, a testament to both human endurance and the healer's desperate attempt to provide relief. This single skull pushes the history of dentistry back by over 4,000 years earlier than previously known anywhere in the world. As the civilization matured, this knowledge likely grew. While clear medical texts from the Indus Valley are lost, we can infer advanced understanding from artifacts and later traditions. Archaeologists have found carefully crafted bronze and copper tools with fine, sharp points and blades at sites like Harappa. Some of these bear a striking resemblance to surgical instruments described in the much later Ayurvedic texts of ancient India, tools for lancing, scraping, and cutting. It is a compelling, though circumstantial, link. The people who could drill a microscopic hole through carnelian and perform trepanation on a skull certainly had the manual dexterity and anatomical courage for basic surgery. Their profound knowledge of plants, evident in their agriculture, almost certainly extended to herbal medicine. Later Vedic and Ayurvedic texts, which may preserve strands of knowledge from the Indus period, list hundreds of medicinal plants native to the region, used for everything from fever to infection to digestive ailments. The Indus people, living in close harmony with their environment, would have experimented and learned which roots, leaves, and barks could heal. The core mystery is not whether they had medical knowledge, but how it was structured and transmitted. Without a deciphered script, we have no medical manuals, no lists of symptoms, no names of diseases or healers' codes. Was medicine a specialized profession or a skill passed down within families? Were the healers also the priests, connecting physical health to spiritual balance at a place like the Great Bath? The drilled teeth from Mehrgarh stand as silent, powerful proof of a compassionate, empirical science. Someone saw suffering, understood its localized cause, and had the tools and the will to intervene. That moment of care, frozen in a skull for 9 millennia, speaks louder than any text. It tells us that long before they built perfect cities, they were trying to mend the imperfect human body, weaving a thread of healing knowledge that may never have been written down, but was undoubtedly passed from hand to hand and generation to generation. Yet that early, compassionate touch finds no echo in their most pervasive symbol. Staring back at us from thousands of carved seals is a creature of serene, stylized power. It is a bull standing in profile, its body a study in muscular curves and careful line work. But this is no ordinary bull. From its forehead projects a single, curved horn, often described as a unicorn. Before it, almost without exception, stands a curious object, a tall, stand-like item that some call a ritual incense burner or a sacred manger. This single-horned bull is the undisputed king of Indus iconography, appearing on the vast majority of seals ever found. Its very ubiquity makes it a central mystery, a symbol so common it must have been fundamental to their identity, yet its meaning is locked away. The first puzzle is the animal itself. What are we actually looking at? Some scholars argue it is a purely mythical beast, a composite creature like the griffin or the sphinx, born from imagination to represent an idea greater than any living animal. Others propose it is a highly stylized representation of a real, now extinct animal, the mighty aurochs, the wild ancestor of modern cattle, which was often depicted with a distinctive horn shape in profile in other ancient arts. The most practical theory suggests it is simply a regular bull, perhaps a prized specimen, whose second horn is obscured by artistic convention, or because the animal is shown wearing a decorated harness or headdress that covers one horn, leaving the other prominently visible. This object before it deepens the enigma. Is it a feeding trough indicating this is a valued, domesticated animal? Or is it an altar or a censer, suggesting the bull is part of a sacrificial or devotional scene? The combination feels undeniably ritualistic. This creature was not just an animal, it was an icon loaded with meaning. So what did it symbolize? One compelling idea is that it functioned as a clan emblem. In a society without obvious kings, social structure may have been organized around familial or occupational groups. The unicorn could have been the totem of a powerful, widespread clan, its seal used to mark property and transactions, a heraldic crest in stone. Its frequency might simply mean that this was the most numerous or influential group. Another interpretation sees it as a universal symbol of masculine power, fertility, and economic wealth. Bulls were the engines of agriculture, the source of traction for plows, and symbols of virility across the ancient world. To stamp this image was to invoke prosperity and strength. The most tantalizing possibility connects it to the divine. Could this unicorn bull be the sacred vehicle or even the earthly form of a major Indus deity, perhaps linked to the powerful figure on the Pashupati seal? Its constant presence before what looks like an altar strongly suggests a religious context. Perhaps every merchant, by using this seal, was not just signing his name but invoking the protection and blessing of a god. The frustrating beauty of this symbol is that all these meanings could be true at once. It could represent a specific clan whose identity was tied to the stewardship of a sacred animal connected to a god of fertility and power. The seal was then both a practical signature and a pious amulet. To understand this one, repeated image is to hold a key to their entire symbolic universe, a key that fits a lock we have yet to find. The silent bull stands guard before the gate of their inner world, and we are still searching for the password. The silent bull may have grazed on banks that are now only dust. Across the vast plains between the modern Indus and Ganges river systems lies a sprawling, ancient network of dry channels known as the Rakhigarhi. Today, it is a seasonal stream that disappears into the desert of Rajasthan, but 4,000 years ago, this may have been the true geographical heart of the Indus Valley Civilization. Satellite imagery and ground surveys reveal the ghost of a colossal river system, a paleo-channel stretching hundreds of miles from the Himalayan foothills to the Arabian Sea. Dozens of major Indus sites, including the great city of Kalibangan, are clustered along its dried-up course far more densely than along the Indus River itself. This lost river is not just a geographical feature, it is the centerpiece of a theory that could rewrite the map of ancient history. Many scholars believe the Rakhigarhi is the physical counterpart to the Saraswati, a magnificent, life-giving river described in the Rig Veda, the oldest sacred text of India, as the best of mothers, the best of rivers. The hymns praise its mighty flow between the Yamuna and the Sutlej rivers, a description that matches the Rakhigarhi's ancient path perfectly. This potential identification is electrifying, for it suggests a direct, tangible link between the physical world of the Indus people and the earliest literary traditions of the subcontinent. The geological evidence tells a story of dramatic change. sediment cores drilled from the old riverbed show layers of fine, water-deposited sand and silt, proof of a once perennial, powerful flow. Then the layers change abruptly to coarse, wind-blown sand. Something catastrophic happened. The leading culprit is a massive tectonic upheaval. The Earth is restless in the Himalayan region, and it is believed that a series of ancient earthquakes caused the rivers that fed the Ganga-Hakra, rivers that once flowed from the mountains, to be captured or diverted. One major tributary may have been seized by the more aggressive Yamuna system, another by the Sutlej. Starved of its headwaters, the great river began to wither. Climate change likely delivered the final blow, as weakening monsoons provided less and less seasonal rain to replenish it. Over centuries, the mighty Saraswati shrank to a trickle, then vanished into the sand. The human consequences of this drying would have been slow, relentless, and devastating. Imagine a civilization whose largest population centers, whose agricultural breadbasket, was strung along this river like pearls on a string. As the flow became unreliable, the annual floods that fertilized the fields would fail. The water table would drop, making wells run dry. The central authority, which depended on grain surpluses from these regions, would lose its economic foundation. This theory presents the decline not as a sudden collapse, but as a long, grinding migration. Faced with a dying homeland, communities did not vanish, they packed up their lives and moved. The archaeological record shows a clear eastward shift in settlement patterns over time, toward the more reliable waters of the Ganges River basin and the monsoon-fed regions of central India. This was not an invasion from the outside, but a desperate, internal exodus in search of water. The debate among historians and archaeologists is fierce. Was the river's death the primary driver of deurbanization, or was it one severe stressor among many, like changing trade routes or social fragmentation? Some argue that the major cities on the Indus itself, like Mohenjo-Daro, survived the river's decline for centuries, suggesting a more complex unraveling. Yet the ghost river's pull on the imagination is undeniable. It offers a profound physical explanation for a civilization's slow fade, a story written not in conquest but in the silent, shifting courses of water and earth. The Saraswati's disappearance became a foundational myth for later cultures, a memory of a lost golden age. For us, it is a stark reminder that the fate of the mightiest human endeavors is often held in the balance by the rivers we build beside. This profound piece stands as a stark contradiction. In a Bronze Age world defined by conquest, where kings in Egypt and Mesopotamia carved their glory in scenes of battle and subjugation, the Indus Valley presents a startlingly different picture. The evidence, or rather the lack of it, is systematic and compelling. Their cities had walls, but these were likely for flood control and civic demarcation, not for defense against armies. They lacked the complex bastions, arrow slits, and reinforced gates of true fortresses. In their vast artistic repertoire of seals and figurines, you will find no scenes of prisoners bound, no depictions of warriors in combat, no chariots charging into battle. The animals are peaceful or powerful, never warlike. The few weapons discovered, simple copper spearheads, arrowheads, and axes, are tools that could be used for hunting or everyday labor as easily as for fighting. There are no arsenals, no caches of specialized swords or armor. Even the human remains whisper of quiet lives. Studies of skeletons from major cemeteries at Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro show an almost complete absence of traumatic injuries caused by weapons. The fractures and ailments seen are from accidents, disease, and hard work, not from violence. The archaeological layers tell the same story for centuries. There are no strata of widespread ash, no layers of destruction where cities were put to the torch by invaders, no hastily filled mass graves. The cities thrived, were maintained, and then were slowly, peacefully abandoned. This consistent, multi-faceted silence forces a radical question upon us. Were the people of the Indus Valley the great pacifists of the ancient world? Did they build a civilization that managed for nearly 1,000 years to resolve internal disputes and deter external threats without resorting to large-scale, organized violence? The idea is as beautiful as it is difficult to accept, challenging our deepest assumptions about the necessity of force in state formation. Perhaps their authority was so deeply rooted in economic benefit, ideological consensus, and efficient administration that coercion was rarely needed. A merchant's prosperity depended on the network functioning smoothly. A farmer's safety relied on the granaries being full. The social contract, visible in the shared baths and clean water, may have been strong enough to make war an irrational, destructive folly. Yet a cautious mind must consider the other possibility. Is this peace an illusion of preservation? Could conflict have taken forms that leave no trace in the archaeological record? Battles might have been fought in open fields far from cities, leaving no mark on urban centers. Weapons of wood and leather, which have long since rotted away, could have been common. Their conflicts might have been economic or ritual, resolved through trade embargoes or ceremonial contests rather than bloody slaughter. The final layers of some sites do show signs of disruption and fire, but these come at the very end during the civilization's fragmentation, and could just as easily point to social breakdown or accidental blazes as to invasion. So we are left with two profound puzzles. The first is historical. What truly allowed this society to maintain such stability? The second is philosophical. Does the Indus Valley prove that large-scale peace is possible, or does it merely remind us how fragile such a state must be? Their silent cities offer no boastful victory stele, only the enduring, enigmatic gift of their quiet streets, asking us to reconsider everything we think we know about power and how civilizations hold themselves together. That profound peace extended into the very homes of the Indus people, where archaeologists have uncovered a silent population of clay. Scattered across the ruins, in the corners of old rooms and amidst the debris of collapsed walls, are thousands of terracotta figurines. These small, hand-modeled statues, fired in simple kilns, offer a stark contrast to the precise, formal artistry of the carved stone seals. While the seals feel like official badges, the figurines pulse with a raw, domestic energy. Most are just a few inches tall, and they fall into a few clear categories. There are hump-backed bulls with sturdy legs, tiny carts with solid wheels ready to be pulled, and monkeys caught in playful poses. But the most numerous and the most debated are the female figures. These are the so-called mother goddesses. They are stylized with pinched noses, elaborate headdresses that look like fans or crowns, heavy hips, and prominent bare breasts. Many were originally painted with red ochre or other pigments. They feel ancient, powerful, and deeply symbolic. The immediate, almost instinctual interpretation is to see them as objects of worship, representations of a great goddess of fertility, a protector of the home and harvest. This idea connects them to similar figurines found across the ancient world, from Anatolia to prehistoric Europe. The logic is compelling, for what could be more fundamental to an agricultural society than invoking divine power for fertility, both of the land and the family? Yet this very instinct is the core of the mystery. Are we projecting our own assumptions onto these silent clay forms? The challenge is that we lack any context that definitively proves their sacred role. They are not found in special shrines or altars, but mixed in with everyday household trash. They are not depicted on seals being venerated. Could some of these figures simply be toys? The small carts and animal figurines almost certainly were, the Bronze Age equivalent of a child's doll or toy truck. If a child played with a clay cow, why not with a clay woman? Perhaps they were popular art, cherished figurines representing fashion or an ideal of beauty, much like a decorative ornament today. Or maybe they served as teaching aids, used to illustrate stories or social roles. The line between the sacred and the mundane in the ancient world was often blurry. An object could start as a toy and later be given as a votive offering, or a cult figure could be copied and become a common household charm. The female figurines might have been all these things at once. A single figurine could be a child's plaything, a mother's talisman for a safe birth, and a symbol of a widely recognized divine principle, depending on the moment and the person holding it. This ambiguity forces us to look more carefully at their details. The elaborate headdresses suggest these were not casual depictions of everyday women, but figures of importance or ritual adornment. The emphasis on breasts and hips strongly points to symbols of nurture and generative power. Some figurines show a female holding a child, a universal image of motherhood. Others have small, cup-like depressions in their heads or shoulders, possibly for holding oil or incense as part of a domestic offering. These clues tilt the scale toward a ritual or symbolic function for at least a significant portion of them. When we contrast them with the formal seal iconography, the difference in context becomes clear. The seals were tools of public identity and economic life, carved with care from imported stone and used to mark property in the wider world. The terracotta figurines were objects of the private, domestic sphere, made from common local clay and found inside the home. If the seals represent the civilization's public face, its bureaucracy and trade, the figurines represent its private heart, the concerns of family, health, and the continuity of life. This duality is profoundly telling. It suggests a spirituality that was not confined to grand temples on the citadel, but was woven into the daily fabric of the home. A person might conduct business with a unicorn seal around their neck, invoking a clan or civic deity, then return home to light a small offering before a terracotta goddess for protection over their family. The mystery of the figurines, therefore, is not a simple puzzle of either-or, but a lesson in the complexity of ancient belief. They remind us that for the people of the Indus Valley, the divine was likely as present in the quiet of the courtyard as it was in the grandeur of the great bath, and that the most powerful mysteries are sometimes found not in monuments but in the palm of your hand. That private, domestic spirituality may hold a key to the civilization's most enduring legacy. After the cities faded and the great rivers shifted, the subcontinent did not fall into a dark age. Instead, a new cultural force emerged from the northwest, one whose hymns and rituals would lay the foundation for Hinduism. This is the Vedic culture, brought by pastoralists speaking an early form of Sanskrit. For over a century, the story was clear and stark. The history books described a sharp break. The sophisticated, urban Indus people were either wiped out or subjugated by these incoming Aryan tribes, whose Rig Veda speaks of destroying walled cities and worshipping gods like Indra and Agni. The two worlds were presented as opposites, one indigenous and mysterious, the other foreign and literary, with a vast, silent gap between them. This was the narrative of disjunction, a clean cut in the timeline of India's past. But archaeology and now genetics have blurred that line into a complex, contentious, and deeply fascinating mystery of continuity. The old invasion model is crumbling under new evidence. As we've seen, the skeletons from Indus cities show no signs of mass violent trauma. The material culture does not end in a fiery layer of destruction, but in a slow fade. Genetically, the people of the mature Indus Valley show no ancestry from the steppe pastoralists who later brought Sanskrit to India. That steppe ancestry only appears in the genetic record centuries after the major cities were already in decline. This means the Vedic people arrived into a landscape that was already populated by the descendants of the Indus civilization, living in smaller, rural communities. They did not encounter a vacuum, they encountered a people. So what happened when these two worlds met? The answer is not conquest and replacement, but a long, slow process of mixing, adaptation, and cultural exchange that may have lasted for 1,000 years. The evidence for continuity is subtle but persistent, woven into the fabric of daily life. Take agriculture. The Vedic people were pastoralists, herders of cattle and sheep. But when they settled in the Ganges Valley, they became farmers. The crops they adopted were not new introductions from the steppes. They were the same package cultivated for millennia by the Indus people: wheat, barley, lentils, and peas. The shift to a settled agricultural life in the eastern plains would have been impossible without learning from the indigenous populations who already knew this land. In crafts, the thread is finer but visible. The art of firing distinctive black and red pottery, a style that appears in the Ganges region after the Indus decline, shows a clear technological link to earlier traditions. The meticulous drilling of carnelian beads, an Indus specialty, disappears for a time, but the knowledge of lapidary work does not vanish entirely, resurfacing in later Indian jewelry traditions. The most powerful argument, however, is not in things but in people. The genetic data is unequivocal. The single largest source of ancestry for modern South Asians comes from the Indus Valley population itself. When the steppe-related groups arrived, they did not wipe out the existing people. They mixed with them. The woman from Rakhigarhi, with her purely indigenous genes, is a direct ancestor to millions living today. This biological continuity forces us to ask a profound cultural question. If the people never went away, how much of their culture, their beliefs, their stories survived? This is where the mystery becomes heated and deeply significant. Could elements of Indus spirituality have been absorbed into what we now call Hinduism? The clues are tantalizing but open to fierce debate. The figure on the Pashupati seal, seated in a yogic posture, surrounded by animals, echoes the later god Shiva as lord of the beasts. The reverence for a pipal tree depicted on seals continues unbroken in Hindu and Buddhist worship. The practice of ritual bathing, so central at the Great Bath, finds a direct parallel in the sacred importance of rivers and tanks in Hinduism. Even the iconic lingam shape finds possible precursors in those enigmatic conical stones. Yet, the Vedic texts themselves are silent about these connections. They worship a different pantheon centered on sky gods and fire sacrifice. This creates a puzzle. Did the Vedic tradition, as it moved into the subcontinent, gradually adopt and transform the local deities and practices of the Indus descendants, folding them into a new synthesis over centuries? Or are these similarities just a coincidence, a result of common human experiences with nature and the divine? The legacy of the Indus Valley Civilization, therefore, may not be a dead end but a deep underground river. Its waters may have flowed unseen, merging with other streams to create the vast, complex river system of Indian culture that followed. Its greatest contribution might not be a list of inventions we can point to, but a substrate, a foundational layer of people, practices, and perhaps ideas that provided the bedrock upon which everything else was built. The civilization did not die with its last brick. It transformed, its essence seeping into the soil to nourish a forest of new traditions. To study this continuity is to trace the ghost of a giant in the DNA, the crafts, and the spiritual instincts of a continent, a ghost that refuses to be dismissed. Buried in the rubble of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa are objects of elegant, puzzling simplicity. They are rings of stone shaped like a thick donut or a flattened sphere with a hole cleanly drilled through its center. Archaeologists call them ring stones. They vary in size from small enough to hold in your palm to large discs weighing several kilograms. They are finely made, their surfaces often smoothed and polished from years of handling. They are not rare, isolated curiosities, but common finds appearing in multiple cities across the civilization. And to this day, no one can say for certain what they were for. This is the quiet genius of the Indus mystery. Even their most ordinary artifacts refuse to give up their secrets. The most practical theory sees them as architectural components. The larger, heavier ring stones could have served as bases for wooden columns. Imagine a massive timber post, the kind that might have supported a roof over a marketplace or a veranda around the Great Bath. To prevent the post from sinking into the ground or rotting from moisture, it would be set on a stone base. A ring stone with its central hole would be perfect. The post would fit snugly into the hole, distributing its weight evenly across the stone slab, which was itself set firmly into the earth. This is a common technique in ancient construction worldwide, and it makes logical sense. Yet, if this was their primary use, why are so many found scattered and not in neat rows where buildings once stood? And what of the smaller, handheld versions? This leads to a second, more playful idea. Could the ring stones be game pieces? Many ancient cultures had board games involving the movement of tokens. A ring stone with its stable, flat base and easy-to-grip shape would be an ideal playing piece for a game like checkers or a primitive form of mancala. Perhaps they were tossed in a game of skill, aiming for a target or threading them onto a stick. The wear patterns on some suggest they were rolled or slid across surfaces. But if they were toys or game pieces, why are they so consistently and finely made from stone, a material requiring considerable labor to shape when clay or wood would have sufficed? A third possibility dips into the ritual. In many cultures, perforated stones are symbols of the sacred, representing portals, the cycle of life, or cosmic wheels. A ring stone could have been a ritual object, perhaps used as a base for a sacred post or standard during ceremonies. It might have been an object of veneration itself, a symbol of a deity or a natural force. Some have even speculated they were used in astronomy, as simple sighting devices to track the movement of stars or the sun through the central hole. This theory is compelling but entirely circumstantial, as no ring stone has ever been found in an unambiguous ritual context like an altar or a shrine. Finally, there is the economic explanation. Given the Indus obsession with standardization, could these have been weights? Their consistent shapes and graded sizes fit the pattern. But here, the system breaks down. Unlike the beautifully calibrated cubic stone weights, the ring stones do not follow a clear binary or decimal progression in mass. Their weights seem irregular, not standardized. They could have been used for a specific, niche purpose in trade, perhaps for weighing bulky, coarse materials where perfect precision was not needed. But again, the evidence is thin. The true frustration and beauty of the ring stones lie in their very ambiguity. A carved seal with a unicorn clearly had a symbolic and administrative function. A terracotta cart was a toy, but the ring stone, it is a blank slate. It could have been a column base one day, a child's toy the next, and a ritual object during a festival. Its purpose may have shifted with context, making it invisible to our categorizing minds. This simple stone circle, more than any grand statue, embodies the core challenge of Indus archaeology. We have the object, but we have lost the conversation that surrounded it. We hold the tool, but we cannot see the hand that used it, or the smile that might have accompanied its use in a game, or the solemnity of a ritual where it was placed. The ring stone is a silent wheel, and we are left to guess what kind of cart it turned. The ring stone's silent purpose finds a dramatic counterpoint on the coast. Far to the south, in the flat, tidal lands of modern Gujarat, lies the city of Lothal. Its name, given in modern times, means Mound of the Dead, but 4,000 years ago, this was a place pulsing with maritime life. At its eastern edge, archaeologists uncovered a massive, rectangular structure that ignited one of the most heated debates in Indus archaeology. It is a vast basin, measuring roughly 215 meters long by 37 meters wide, meticulously built from baked bricks and lined with a waterproofing layer of lime and clay. On one side, a narrow channel connects it to the nearby Sabarmati River, which would have flowed into the Arabian Sea. A set of steps like a ghat leads down into the water. For many, this is the world's first known engineered dockyard, a Bronze Age port where ocean-going ships were built, repaired, and loaded with cargo. The evidence is compelling. The basin's location, directly linked to a navigable river leading to the sea, is perfect for a harbor. the brick walls are sloped, which would have helped prevent them from collapsing under the pressure of water and the bumping of hulls. The inlet channel features a clever lock gate system. A wooden door or barrier could have been raised or lowered to control the water level within the dock, allowing ships to enter at high tide and be serviced at a consistent depth. This is not a simple pond, it is a piece of sophisticated hydraulic engineering. If this interpretation is correct, it changes our entire understanding of the Indus Reach. It means they were not just river traders but bold mariners. Ships built here, likely from sturdy teak wood, would have been large enough, perhaps 20 to 30 meters long, with deep hulls and single masts carrying woven cotton sails. They would have coasted along the shoreline of the Arabian Sea, riding the predictable monsoon winds. Their destinations were the rich ports of the Persian Gulf, like Dilmun, modern Bahrain, and Magan, Oman, and perhaps even the mouth of the Tigris and Euphrates, connecting directly to Mesopotamia. The cargo leaving Lothal would have been the civilization's finest exports: bales of precious cotton cloth, long strands of gleaming carnelian beads, ivory, and exotic woods. In return, ships would return with copper from Oman, luxury goods from Mesopotamia, and perhaps even the distant lapis lazuli from Afghanistan that came via overland routes. A confirmed dockyard at Lothal paints the Indus people as masters of the monsoon, architects of a maritime network that tied their civilization to the wider world. But not all scholars are convinced. A rival theory argues the Great Basin was simply an oversized irrigation tank or a freshwater reservoir for the city. They point out that the surrounding area was agricultural, and such large storage tanks were common in the region for collecting seasonal rainwater. The inlet channel, they suggest, was for filling the tank from the river, not for admitting seafaring ships. The steps could have been for access to water for domestic or industrial use. The debate hinges on the presence of salt. If the basin held seawater, it was a dock. If it held fresh water, it was a tank. Scientific studies have been inconclusive, with millennia of flooding and siltation obscuring the original chemical evidence. The truth might be a brilliant synthesis. In a coastal city where drinking water was precious, could the structure have served a dual purpose? Perhaps it was designed as a reservoir filled by river water during the monsoon, but its engineers, with their genius for adaptation, also designed it so that during high tides or seasonal needs, it could function as a berthing area for boats. The very ambiguity is a testament to their flexible, practical intelligence. Whether solely a dock or a multi-purpose marvel, Lothal's basin stands as a monument to a people who looked outward. Its quiet, brick-lined walls once held the reflection of tall masts and the bustle of a global economy, a silent echo of the waves that carried their civilization's name to the clay tablets of distant kings. The straight lines of their cities may have been drawn not just for order but for the cosmos. The Indus people were meticulous observers of their world, and the perfect cardinal alignment of their streets, oriented north-south and east-west with such precision, hints at a profound attention to the heavens. This was not merely a practical choice for drainage or defense. It was a symbolic act, a way of anchoring their human-made world to the fundamental axis of the universe. Building a city on a true north-south grid required advanced surveying skills and a fixed celestial reference point, likely the pole star or the sun's solstice positions. This alignment wove a cosmic order into the very fabric of daily life, making every walk down a main avenue a subconscious journey along a sacred axis. This celestial connection might have been made explicit in specific rituals. At the site of Calibangan on the citadel, archaeologists found a series of those raised brick platforms with clay-lined pits, the ones identified as fire altars. Their arrangement is what sparks a deeper mystery. Several of these altars were not isolated but were grouped together in a particular pattern. Some researchers have proposed that the layout of these altars and the orientation of the platforms themselves could have been used for observational astronomy. Imagine a priest or an astronomer king standing at a designated point, watching the sunrise over a specific altar on the morning of the summer solstice, or marking the rise of a bright star like Aldebaran or the Pleiades cluster to signal the start of the planting season. The fire in the altar would then be more than an offering. It would be a terrestrial echo of the celestial fire, a ritual linking earth and sky. While this interpretation remains speculative and controversial, it fits a global pattern where ancient priesthoods often held the keys to calendrical knowledge, using it to guide agriculture and legitimize their authority. Their survival absolutely depended on tracking time. As master farmers, the Indus people needed to know precisely when the monsoon rains would arrive, when to sow wheat and barley, and when to harvest. Their entire agricultural surplus, the engine of their civilization, was governed by seasonal cycles. They would have watched for clear celestial signals, the changing position of the sun at dawn, the heliacal rising of certain stars just before sunrise, the phases of the moon. This practical, observational astronomy would have been a matter of communal memory passed down through generations. The true mystery is whether they formalized this knowledge into a written calendar system. Did they codify their observations into a set of rules, perhaps even recording them with those undeciphered symbols? Other contemporary cultures did. The Mesopotamians had a complex lunisolar calendar. The Egyptians tracked the star Sirius to predict the Nile's flood. Did the Indus Valley develop something equally sophisticated? A tantalizing clue comes from some of the longer seal inscriptions. A few sequences of symbols repeat in a pattern that some researchers argue resembles a calendrical notation, perhaps a list of months or festivals. Without the ability to read the script, we cannot know. Their calendar, if it existed, is a ghost, a structure of time we can sense from their orderly lives but cannot see. This leads to the final, haunting layer of the mystery. In other ancient societies, astronomy quickly merged with cosmology and mythology. The stars became gods, the planets became wandering deities, and celestial events told stories of divine drama. The Egyptians saw the Milky Way as a heavenly Nile. The Mesopotamians mapped the constellations and linked them to their epic tales. Did the Indus people do the same? Did the unicorn on the seal have a counterpart in the night sky? Was the Pashupati figure seated in meditation also seen in the stars? Their silence on this point is profound. We have no star charts, no zodiacal symbols carved on temple walls. Their cosmic view, if they had one, is utterly lost. This leaves us with a civilization that was clearly in tune with the rhythms of the heavens, that perhaps built its cities as earthly mirrors of a celestial order, but took the meaning of that order with them when they left. We can see the alignments they built, but we can no longer hear the stories they told about the lights in the sky. The silence that fell over the cities was not a crash, but a long, soft sigh. This is the defining paradox of the Indus Valley's end, a process archaeologists call deurbanization. There was no single dramatic fall of Harappa. Instead, the great urban experiment simply wound down like a complex machine whose operators gradually walked away. Streets that were once swept clean began to accumulate rubbish. The central drain in a house would clog, and instead of repairing it, the inhabitants might just throw their waste into the corner of the courtyard. The broad, straight avenues, so sacred to the original plan, were encroached upon. People built new, flimsier walls of mud brick, subdividing the grand old houses and cutting across the geometric grid. It was a slow, persistent unraveling of the civic contract. The populations did not vanish, they redistributed. Over generations, families left the grand, demanding cities for smaller villages and rural homesteads. The archaeological record shows a clear shift in settlement patterns, from a handful of massive urban centers to a much larger number of small, scattered communities. This later period is known as the Late Harappan phase, and it presents a mystery of cultural memory. In these smaller settlements, life went on, but the material culture changed, simplified. The beautiful, standardized pottery with its black painted designs gave way to cruder, plain wares. The exquisite seals with their script and unicorns stopped being made entirely. Those perfectly calibrated stone weights fell out of use. The script itself, the very voice of their administration, was forgotten, the last person who could read those symbols passing away without an heir. The sophisticated urban template, a masterpiece of social engineering that had held for centuries, was completely and utterly lost. Why would a society abandon such a successful blueprint? This is not a question of invasion, but of choice and erosion. One possibility is that it was a conscious collective rejection. The urban lifestyle, with its strict rules, social hierarchies, and dependence on a fragile centralized system, may have come to be seen as more burden than benefit. As the climate dried and the rivers shifted, the immense effort required to maintain the cities, to dredge the drains, manage the granaries, coordinate long-distance trade may have simply outweighed the rewards. The people facing scarcity may have voted with their feet for a simpler, more resilient, and more autonomous rural life. They traded the grandeur of the grid for the self-sufficiency of the village. The other, more haunting possibility is a slow forgetting. Civilizations are not just built on bricks, but on networks of knowledge, of trade, of shared purpose. As trade routes faltered and populations dispersed, these networks began to fragment. The specialist class, the administrators and scribes and master engineers, found their skills were no longer in demand. Their knowledge, once passed meticulously from teacher to apprentice, had no new students. The recipes for making the perfect brick ratio, the precise calibration of the weights, the meaning of the script, all of this was intricate, specialized knowledge. Once the social structure that supported and required it broke apart, that knowledge could evaporate within a few generations. It was not actively rejected, it was just no longer taught. Imagine a master beadmaker, his hands still skilled at drilling carnelian, but with no one to sell his beads to, and no apprentice willing to spend years learning the art. He takes his skill to the grave. This is how a civilization can lose its own blueprint, not through fire and sword, but through quiet attrition. The great urban machine required every part to function, and when enough pieces were removed, the entire concept ceased to make sense. The people survived, adapting brilliantly to a new, harder world, but the idea of the city, as the Indus had perfected it, died with the last engineer who remembered how to lay out a drain that would slope just so. They did not fall, they faded, leaving behind the skeleton of their ambition for us to ponder, a ghost of a society that forgot how to be itself. But the story of the Indus is far from finished. The greatest mystery of all may still be buried beneath the soil. Of the over 1,000 known Indus Valley sites, from colossal cities to small villages, only a handful have been excavated in any detail. We have only scratched the surface of a civilization that once covered an area larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. This means the grand narrative we have pieced together is based on a tiny, fragmented sample of their world. Every new dig has the potential to rewrite the story. Take the site of Rakhigarhi in the modern Indian state of Haryana. Once thought to be a modest settlement, recent excavations have revealed it is the largest Indus city ever discovered, sprawling over an area of over 350 hectares, significantly larger than the famous Mohenjo-Daro. Its streets, its walls, its neighborhoods are only beginning to emerge from the earth. With each season, archaeologists uncover new structures, new artifacts, new layers of complexity that force us to reconsider the scale and sophistication of this civilization. Rakhigarhi is a powerful reminder that our map of the Indus world is still being drawn, and the capital, the true heart of the empire, might still be waiting to be found. The search no longer relies solely on shovels and trowels. Today, scientists are using the eyes of satellites orbiting high above the Earth. Specialized imagery can detect subtle variations in vegetation and soil moisture, revealing the ghostly outlines of ancient walls, streets, and reservoirs buried under farmland and desert. Ground-penetrating radar sends pulses of energy into the Earth, painting a three-dimensional picture of what lies below without moving a single grain of soil. These technologies are acting like a vast, non-invasive archaeological scan, identifying hundreds of potential new sites, tracing the lost courses of rivers like the Saraswati, and showing us that the network of settlements was even denser and more interconnected than we ever imagined. This leads to the most tantalizing question of modern Indus archaeology. What if the key, the one object that unlocks everything, is still out there? For over a century, the dream of every scholar has been to find a Rosetta Stone for the Indus script, a bilingual inscription where their mysterious symbols are paired with a language we can read. It could be a treaty with Mesopotamia, a dedication to a foreign king, or a votive offering from a traveling merchant. Such a discovery would shatter the silence, giving voice to the seals and the signboards overnight. Or perhaps we might finally find a royal tomb, a single opulent burial filled with treasures and inscribed objects would instantly answer 100 questions about their rulers, their religion, and their hierarchy. It would put a name and a face to the power behind the grid. Every time an archaeologist's tool touches the soil at a new site, they carry that hope. The next trench, the next scan, the next fragment of pottery could be the one that changes everything. The Indus Valley Civilization is not a closed book on a museum shelf. It is an open excavation, a living mystery where the past is actively reaching out to the present, asking us to keep looking. Their silent cities are not just ruins, they are a mirror. After exploring 29 specific enigmas, from the undeciphered script to the lost river, we arrive at a final, overarching mystery, one that is less about the past and more about us. Why does a civilization that vanished 4,000 years ago, leaving no epic poems or king lists, still captivate and challenge us so deeply? Its legacy is not a list of conquered territories or a dynasty's name. It is a subtle, pervasive whisper in the foundations of modern life. Look at the map of South Asia today. The genetic studies are clear. A significant portion of the ancestry of people across India, Pakistan, and beyond flows directly from the men and women of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. They are not a vanished race, they are ancestors. Their biological continuity is the first and most profound legacy, a living connection written in DNA. Culturally, the threads are finer but tantalizing. The practice of ritual purification in water, so central at the Great Bath, finds a direct echo in the Hindu tradition of bathing in sacred rivers and temple tanks. The seated, meditative figure on the Pashupati seal, surrounded by animals, feels like a prehistoric prophecy of the god Shiva as the lord of yoga and beasts. The reverence for certain trees and animals depicted on the seals continues unbroken in the subcontinent's spiritual ecology. Even the concept of a gridded, planned city, though lost for millennia, resonates as a modern urban ideal. Their most practical legacy, however, might be a philosophy of civic life. In an age obsessed with monuments to individual power, the Indus Valley stands as a radical alternative, a testament to what a society can achieve when it invests its greatest efforts in public welfare, standardized systems, and communal infrastructure. They built for the collective, not the ego. In a world facing climate stress, their sophisticated water management at places like Dholavira, capturing every drop in a desert, is a lesson in resilience and long-term planning that feels urgently modern. Their apparent peace, the lack of evidence for large-scale warfare, asks a haunting question of our own violent times. Was it possible, and what did it require? The final mystery of the Indus is philosophical. It holds up a mirror to the fragility of all civilization. Their story shows that complexity is not a guarantee of permanence. A society can be brilliantly organized, technologically advanced, and economically connected, and still quietly unravel from within when the environmental or social pressures become too great. They mastered their world but could not master its slow, relentless change. This silence also underscores the profound limits of our historical knowledge. For all our science, we can still lose the voice of an entire people. We can know what they ate, how they built, even trace their genetic lineage, but their jokes, their songs, their prayers, the names they called their children are gone forever. This is a humbling reminder that history is written not just by the winners, but by those who leave behind the loudest artifacts. The quiet ones can disappear, their stories evaporating like morning mist. Yet, in their very silence, they speak to a universal human drive, the drive to create order from chaos, to impose a grid upon the wilderness, to find meaning in symbols, and to build a community that transcends the individual. We see ourselves in their straight streets, their meticulous waits, their careful drains. We recognize the urge to make a mark, to say, we were here, we built this, we mattered. The Indus people did all that, and then they left the stage without a final speech. So perhaps their greatest lesson is not in the answers they left behind, but in the beautiful, enduring power of the questions. They remind us that the past is never fully knowable, that mystery is an essential part of the human story, and that sometimes the most profound legacy is the quiet space left for wonder. Their quiet legacy is a challenge etched in brick and silence. We have walked through 30 enduring mysteries, from the cryptic symbols no one can read to the ghost of a mighty river that vanished into sand. We have seen cities without palaces, a society that built baths instead of monuments to war, and a civilization that faded not with a bang, but with a long, soft sigh of abandonment. The Indus Valley does not fit into our comfortable stories of ancient power. It forces us to question everything we think we know. Must civilization always be built by kings and armies? Can a society thrive for 1,000 years on trade, consensus, and civic genius alone? What does it mean when a people's greatest achievement is a clean, well-planned street, and their most profound statement is a refusal to glorify any single ruler? Their world stands as a radical, quiet alternative in the noisy history of humanity. They mastered their environment, connected continents, and crafted objects of stunning beauty, all while leaving the story of why they did it locked in those tiny, unreadable seals. So now the mystery passes to you. After this journey through their lost world, what do you think happened to them? Was it the slow death of a river, a forgotten social contract, or something else entirely? And which of their puzzles captures your imagination the most? The silent script, the peaceful streets, the dancing girl frozen in bronze. Share your theories in the comments below. And if you want to join us in unraveling the past, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest puzzles.